Wednesday afternoon to you. I hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. Plenty to talk about a little later in the show. Amico from hoopswire.com will join us. We'll talk about the Cavs as they get ready for the second half of the season. We begin by talking Browns. So Mike Lombardi, former NFL executive, was on the Pat McAfee show talking about the Browns and Baker Mayfield's situation.
If I was at the Browns, I would say, look, we know who Baker is. We got to run the right scheme. We got to run the right system for him. We know his limitations. He was hurt last year, had a better year 2 years ago. But unless we can replace him, why are we getting rid of him? Like, who's better than him that we're going to get right now? It's hard. I mean, Kevin Colbert was saying the same thing about Mason Rudolph. And he's only played in 6 games. He's like, until we get somebody better, and I don't know how I'm going to get somebody better, he's the guy. And so that, to me, would be the approach I would take with Mayfield. I wouldn't extend him. The worst thing they can do is extend him on hope and circumstances as opposed to knowing. I would just pick up the 5th year. You play it out. Let's move forward. We'll keep making the team better around you. And when we get to next year, we get to next year and see where you are. But I would also think about drafting a quarterback. I think the Raiders and the Browns last year in the draft should have drafted a quarterback, partly because they knew this problem was coming up. What are they going to do with Derek Carr? I think what they should do with Derek Carr is extend him. Whatever it is, extend him out. So Josh McDaniels has 2 years to work with Carr to find out what he really has in him to see if he wants to go forward. I think that's the same thing they should do with Mayfield.
Let's welcome in Jeff Phelps, 92.3 The Fan, as well as Bally Sports. And Jeff, I can't really argue with anything Mike Lombardi said. It makes sense.
It does make sense. The only thing I'd say, Dave, is should you look for somebody better? Yeah, you probably should. And that's, you should be doing that with all of your positions. But if you have quarterbacks, questions at quarterback, you must try to improve the situation. And I wonder, and it all comes down to talent evaluation. Do the Browns' deep thinkers think that any of the free agents might be better? Do they think anybody in the draft could be better right away? I doubt that that's the case. Or do they think they can trade for somebody who's an improvement? If they do, they must do it. You've got a team that you think is built to win now, so you better try and win now.
And again, it's the 5th year for Baker Mayfield. He's not going to miraculously ascend, into one of the top 10 quarterbacks, but he doesn't necessarily have to, does he?
Oh, how far do you want to go? Do you want to be pretty good and have him become Kirk Cousins? Okay. That's the thing. Take a look at those, and we all know the teams that went deep have pretty darn good quarterbacks. And, that's the question. And I keep going back to, Dave, the teams aren't showing the patience necessarily that they have in the past with some of these quarterbacks. Jameis Winston, Jared Goff, Mitch Trubisky, Marcus Mariota, we've Jameis Winston. We've seen a lot of these guys, where the teams decide to move on. Here's the other thing. If they think they can improve quarterback this year, then you have to do it. And the reason I say that, because if you go into this year with questions surrounding quarterback and you decide that the answer is not Baker, well, then where are you next year? Are you looking for the rookie quarterback next year to come in? And is a rookie quarterback going to be ready to take advantage of what we think is a window of opportunity with this team before you have to retool a lot of other things? So though I agree with Mike completely, actually, on the unless you find somebody better, why wouldn't you roll with Baker Mayfield? However, I'd really be looking for somebody better.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm not sure. Nobody's sure. I would think Andrew Berry is definitely doing that. All right, Jake Trotter, ESPN, had Browns offseason preview. Best case scenario. Let's take a look at what he says the best case scenario for the Browns is. Browns land Rodgers or Wilson without having to trade away any of their current young stars, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Nick Chubb, and they supply that quarterback, a proven player at wide receiver via trade or free agency. Yeah, and hitting the lottery would be good too, wouldn't it?
I want some of what Jake is drinking.
Yeah.
No, he actually wrote best case scenario. Absolutely, we'll take that. Yeah, here, have a 3rd round pick. We'll take Russell Wilson. Thank you very much. That's not going to happen. I don't see the Browns being able to trade for an upgraded quarterback. I just don't think that's happening.
I don't
because
either.
If a team has that guy, why do they want to trade him?
What would you be willing to give up for a guy like that? 3 first-round picks?
A guy like who?
Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers. Would you be willing to give up the next first-round picks in the next 3 years, 4 years?
I'll give him a quarterback and 2 first-rounders.
Yeah, I don't
How's
know.
that?
Yeah, and again, I don't know if that'll get it done. I would sign. I would sign on for that. Absolutely. And I might give you some other talented young players, but I don't know if that would get it done. All right. Now we took a look at Jake's best case. Here's Jake's worst case scenario, and that's the Browns don't re-sign Clowney to solidify the pass rush opposite Garrett. Failed to get Mayfield any notable help offensively at wide receiver. And if that happens, it's so you've downgraded your pass rush. You haven't really upgraded your passing game. That could be another really, really rough year for the Browns.
That's worst case scenario in Jake's opinion. He's right, because that would get people fired. That would get Andrew Berry perhaps in trouble, Kevin Stefanski perhaps in trouble. Somebody would get fired. So that would be worst case scenario. You've got to go get another defensive end. It's supposed to be a good, deep pass rush defensive end draft. And so that's beneficial. And it's a good wide receiver draft. That's beneficial. And there's some pretty intriguing veterans who are available this offseason too, Dave. So there's no reason that the Browns can't take care of wide receiver and defensive line.
When you look at the Browns, if they fix the passing game, are they a contender? In my mind, they are. I'm curious as to your thoughts. And by fix the passing game, can they get the ball downfield? Can they threaten a defense in the air?
Yes. But however, I think if we're all honest, we've seen Baker Mayfield do that, right? Baker's played really well here at times, and he's not played well here at times. And if we want to dwell on just this year, okay, injury. If he was injured and the Browns put him out there, shame on them. And I would think right now, Dave, there's no way the Browns can look at what happened this year and think, well, Baker was injured last year, so he'll be better this year. Because if they feel that way, then they shouldn't have played him.
Yeah.
Because Case Keenum would have given you a better chance to win games. But then if that's the case, and then they think, well, that's our quarterback play, well, then that's an issue too.
Right.
Because you've got to have better quarterback play. So to me, it screams upgrade the position. And if they put him out there and they thought he wasn't ready to compete because of his injury, well, that's just bad all the way around. And if they listened to Baker, or if Baker listened to his agent, or whatever happened there, and he went out on the field, then Baker needs a new agent, because his value it took a hit. So I think they can improve the passing game. But I think Baker is the key to the whole thing. The wide receivers are all well and good. That's terrific. And better wide receivers will help, but it still comes back to the quarterback.
All right. Before we go to break, we're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, and this one about the Browns and Cleveland fans.
Sports for Cleveland, how's it going? Great show again yesterday. I look forward to today's. I'm just going to be real brief. I think that Cleveland has proven once again that this is not a place for the weak. You have to be a great player to be good in Cleveland, and that's just proven facts. Any bum can come in here and say they're going to do things and say they're going to make things happen. But to really make it happen as a Cleveland Brown, you have to be a great player. And, the last thing I'm going to say is that I look forward to next year, but I don't look forward to another year like last year. I think we can all agree with that. Thanks. Look forward to the show. See you guys.
All right. We appreciate all the voicemails. Jeff, Cleveland loves people that bring winners to the city. You win, they love you. You don't perform, it can be a rough place. But by and large, it's not like a New York or a Philadelphia or one of those East Coast kind of roughs. Fans here are pretty fair, but they do fall in love with their players.
Yes, and yes. Everything you said, I agree with. The thing of it is you can be a good player and succeed here. I'm not sure what you're looking for. Are you looking for great players? Okay, then, if you want great players, then a guy with great ability can be a great player here. A guy who is a great player doesn't come to Cleveland and be a good player, in theory, if that makes any sense. So, all right, I'd like all the great players we can get. It's just a matter of acquiring those guys. And you don't have to just be a great player to succeed here. You can be a role player and succeed in a winning situation. We've seen many of those over the years. And so you need as many great players as you can get, though. I mean, that's just common sense.
Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, Bally Sports. Cavs coverage going to take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, and we are talking plenty of Browns wide receivers. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, Bally Sports. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about one of the Browns' young wide receivers.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, considering the wide receiver situation, regardless of how Jarvis Landry turns out, Dave, you and the guests a lot of times refer to Donovan Peoples-Jones as a developmental player. He's in, his third or fourth year now, entering his third or fourth season. How long is it going to take? I feel like somebody like him should already be well enough along that we could just kind of plug him in. Then we're not so needy at wide receiver. But, the past few years we watched him. I don't have anything bad to say about him. He seems decent. What are your thoughts on him as far as his development?
Appreciate the call, the voicemail as well. And Jeff, when we refer to him on the show as a developmental guy, it's important to remember they drafted him in the 6th round. So he was a surprise to make the team somewhat as a rookie. Had a great training camp a season ago. Then when Odell left, they tried to kind of force him into that number 1 role, the main wide receiver. I don't think that's necessarily fair to his development. Your thoughts on that?
I would agree with that. At some point, once the guy's on a team, I think we have to kind of forget where he was drafted. You're on the team, okay, now produce. And I like Donovan Peoples-Jones a lot. I think he can be a really good wide receiver. And I'm going to go back to the quarterback situation. I looked it up. I don't have the exact numbers. When Odell was considered the number 1 target on this team, the completion percentage to him was low on the passes to Odell, and the completion percentage to Donovan Peoples-Jones while Odell was on the team was really pretty high. It was over 70%. And then Odell left, Donovan Peoples-Jones became kind of the number one target, and that completion percentage to Donovan Peoples-Jones dropped to about what it was with Odell. In fact, I think it might have been a little lower. And I wonder why. I don't think Donovan Peoples-Jones was doing anything different. Maybe defenses were, defending him differently because he was probably the number one target, or maybe your quarterback has a problem throwing to number one targets. I don't know what it is. All I know is that the numbers showed that the number one guy completion percentage was way down, and when he was not the number one guy, it was way up. So I think he can be a pretty good wide receiver, but I'm not going to put any kind of cap on him because I think he's big, he's strong. He was one of the most highly recruited wide receivers in the country coming out of high school, and he went to Michigan. He was considered, the 5-star recruit, blah, 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 all that stuff. Well, you don't lose ability, I don't think, but you have to develop that ability. Maybe that didn't happen in Michigan. I think he's looked good with the Browns. And I think if he's put in a role, Dave, where he can be a key target and maybe, like the man or one of the men, if he's the number one wide receiver going into the season, I think there's a problem. But I think he can be very good. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. I think he can be a pretty good red zone target as well because, as you mentioned, his size. This is also kind of interesting. This is from Browns.com. So Donovan Peoples-Jones averaged 17.6 yards per reception. That's third in the NFL behind Deebo Samuel and Jamar Chase. Now, both of those guys, Chase and Samuel, had more receptions, but 17.6 yards per catch on a team that struggled to throw the ball downfield kind of goes what we were talking about. This is a guy that has some skills and can play.
Mm-hmm. And he can do that for you. And again, it goes back to scheme and it goes back to the quarterback. Can the quarterback get him the ball where he can do something with it? And, at times we've seen Baker Mayfield do that and look good, and at times we haven't. So, as you said earlier on, Dave, in the first segment, he's a fifth-year pro at quarterback. Do you expect him to suddenly become, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen? I hope so, but boy, that would be stunning, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And so he's got to play his best football all the time for our team to get to where it needs to be. And even before his injury this season, we didn't see that.
Yeah. Again, they don't have a better option as of yet, and I'm sure they're exploring those.
I wonder what their scouting was back in the day when certain guys came out. And I say these names only because they're the available guys, and it's Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota and Mitch Trubisky, and they were all first or second picks. Well, okay, so somebody liked them a lot, when they were coming out of college. I wonder what Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski thought of these guys when they were coming out of college. And if they happened to really like one of those guys, remember, they didn't draft Baker Mayfield. Andrew Berry was on the staff for John Dorsey, but he didn't make the pick. That's John Dorsey's pick. So I really do wonder what the evaluation was of the people in the Browns front office with some of these free agent guys when they were coming out. And if it's through the roof, Dave, if somebody, let's just say Andrew Berry thought that Marcus Mariota was the perfect modern day quarterback in the NFL, despite what happened in Tennessee, well, then wouldn't you bring him in here? So those evaluations from several years ago, I think could become key when the Browns are thinking about offseason quarterback stuff. And remember, it's not that far away. It's March 16th when free agency opens.
Yeah, and along those lines, NFL players who need a change of scenery, according to ESPN.com. And for the Browns, they list Jarvis Landry. He came out yesterday, and we've talked about it quite a bit, Jeff. You could tell he was hurt pretty much all year and was playing on 1.5 legs, but it'll be really interesting. He has said he wants to stay in Cleveland. It'll be interesting to see if they can find common ground financially that makes it valuable on both sides.
if I'm the Browns, I want Jarvis Landry back on my football team. And if I'm Jarvis Landry, I want to make as much money as I can. So you just said common ground. That's it. I don't think Jarvis performs at a level that is probably relative to his pay. In other words, if I'm the Browns, I'm probably not going to want to pay him that. And I don't know that you should. You know, I think of the top 10, 15 wide receivers in the NFL. Is Jarvis in that group? I don't think so. That said, I'd really want him to continue on this football team. I think he's a really good football player. He's great. I love his attitude. I love his mentality. I love how hard he plays. He's not a game-breaking talent. You know, he's not DK Metcalf. He's not Jamar Chase. That's not happening. He's not the guys in Dallas, and Dallas has a handful of them. You know, I'd rather have the three guys in Cincinnati with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. That said, I want Jarvis on this team. If he's your number 2 receiver, okay. If he's your number 3 receiver, even better. But you want guys, you need guys who have been there, done that, and have his attitude. But you just said it. Common ground is key. I wonder if he would make that kind of money on the free agent market. I don't think he would. And so I'm curious to see what they might be able to come up with to keep him here. Because why wouldn't you want him here? He's a great pro.
Yeah, and the other thing, underrated, he blocks. He blocks really well for a wide receiver. That's important in what Kevin Stefanski wants to do. All right, before we go to break, this is from BrownsNation.com. 3 wide receiver trade targets Browns should pursue. And I know you're going to like one of these. Brandon Cooks is the first one from the Texans.
That's not it.
That's not it. He's played for a bunch of teams. He's intriguing, but yeah, I'm with you. Number 2, Calvin Ridley. I like him a lot. We got to see.
Ding, ding. Ding.
No, there's one even more. Just you wait. Calvin Ridley is he's a guy. If he's right, remember he stepped away for his mental health. So he's intriguing. This is the one I think you're going to really like. Adam Thielen from the Minnesota Vikings is a guy that with cap and all that. Could be interesting. 31, he signed through 2024, fairly reasonable deal. They're going to have some cap issues, especially if they keep Kirk Cousins, because his cap number's in the 40 millions. Of those, who do you like?
Calvin Ridley.
Wow, I thought you'd go Adam Thielen. I like Calvin Ridley because of his age as well.
Exactly, and I think he's more explosive than Thielen. Although Thielen catches touchdown passes. The one thing about Thielen, if you want to get him, and he's 31 years old, do you want to give up a lot for him? Like if Minnesota said, great, you can have him for a first-round pick, I'd pass. If they said you could have him for a second-round pick, I'd pass. If I could get Calvin Ridley for a first-round pick, I'd really think about it. And if I could get him for a second-round pick, you know, I'm driving your car to the airport to pick him up. So I would really like to get Ridley. But now, Dave, you said it. He's got to be wanting to play football, ready to play football. And you know, not to downplay his situation. He played 5 games last year. Yeah. And as good as he was the year before, it was like 1,300 yards. He catches touchdowns like crazy. As good as he was, well, if he doesn't have his heart and his head into playing football, it doesn't do you any good.
Agree wholeheartedly with you. And Ridley is intriguing again. Due for a bounce back year. Let's hope he's right, and let's hope even more he ends up with the Browns. Jeff Phelps and
I'd take Thielen though. I would take Thielen.
Yeah, Kevin Stefanski has some familiarity with him from the Vikings. So Jeff Phelps and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason about the Browns offense. We'll also take a look at some projected numbers for the free agent wide receivers. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, partners in education, where stars shine. Welcome back, Sports4CLE. We continue talking sports with Jeff Phelps, 92.3 The Fan, as well as Valley Sports coverage of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns' leadership from last season.
I just want to point out something that I thought I saw go on during the season. To me, it became glaringly obvious that whether it's from the coaches all the way down to the players, I don't think I saw any one thing in particular that stuck out to me that made me feel like the team had a clear leader, especially on the offense. We had some things from Myles Garrett, which was good, and that can probably move forward in the future. I don't want to say anything bad about anybody because regardless of what happens, I liked and still like everybody on the team. But again, we lacked leadership, especially on the offense.
Jeff, tell me if you sensed the same thing. Just something seemed like it just wasn't quite right from about week 6 or 7 on, maybe even week 5. And I couldn't figure out what it was, and I still haven't figured out what it was. And I don't know that we'll ever know because you weren't in the locker room. There wasn't the access that you get. Something just didn't seem right.
I would agree with that. And I don't know if attitude changed because of a lack of productivity of the offense or what, but it was clearly flat, at least productivity, attitude, everything else, was Odell the problem? Okay, then why didn't he get better when he left? It didn't really, they didn't score points. And so I don't know what it was, but they need to fix it and they need to fix it this year. And if they don't, Dave, guys will not be here the following season.
Yeah.
If Kevin Stefanski wins Coach of the Year and makes the playoffs in his first year and doesn't last year, and they have a lesser record next year, I like Kevin. I don't want him going anywhere. I don't think he'd be around for a 4th year. The impatience that the organization has shown, Andrew Berry takes over John Dorsey's team, tweaks it, makes it better. And then they fall off the next year. If they fall off again, well, I don't think that those things should necessarily happen. I believe in continuity, and I think you have 2 really good guys here, and I think guys who know what they're doing. But we've also seen ownership that's been impatient over the years. So I think they have to make a step up this year, and if they don't, they're going to be issues. And part of that is an offense that everybody thought was loaded, which turned out to be an extremely underperforming unit. So that's a huge issue, and they have to figure it out. And David, they can put all the wide receivers out there that they want. If it turns out that it's the quarterback and they don't fix it this year or try to fix it, that could get them in trouble too.
Yeah. Again, the offense, it wasn't one thing. If it was one thing, it would have been fixed. It was multi-layered, and I don't know. It's concerning. So this
offensive line injuries didn't help either.
Correct, especially the you were playing with your 4th and 5th tackles for a couple of those games in the middle of the season. All right, CBS Sports projecting contracts, logical landing spots for free agent wide receivers. Browns are listed as logical fits for 2 of them, and one of them is Chris Godwin. The average salary, $18.1 million. Another one that the Browns are listed as a logical landing spot is Allen Robinson. His salary, $16.3 million, is what they are projecting multiple years at that number figure. What do you think of again, that gives you an idea. Those are, 2 of the top 4 or 5 receivers on the market, and they're kind of in the same price range as Jarvis Landry. That gives you an idea of that contract relative to what going rate is for some of the top receivers. Having said that, Godwin, Robinson, are you intrigued? And I'm going to warn you, I'm going to have a cautionary tale after this. So are you intrigued by those guys?
I would take either one of them right now. If it's Godwin, I think I have found my big time guy moving forward. If it's Robinson, I think I have found my clear-cut veteran complement to the wide receiver I draft 13th overall.
Okay.
How's that?
I agree with you. This is what concerns me when we found that. So you want a number one wide receiver. You aren't finding one in free agency. 32 wide receivers assigned as unrestricted free agents since 2018 for $8 million or more per year total contract value. Only 2 have reached 1,000 yards receiving. None of them have had more than 6 touchdowns. The average receiver for the high-end free agents, 41 receptions, 503 yards, 3 touchdowns. And there's a list of them, and you see the names, and you see the average contracts, and those are some of the big-name free agents that have been out there. You see the ages. It's not like they're aging. So, Jeff, the list goes on. So we're going back a couple of years, and you look at them, and there's some big names, but not a lot of production there. If you're Andrew Berry, if you're the Browns, are you concerned? Does that concern you? Because I was like, you got to go get a veteran, and I looked at that, and I'm like, well, maybe 13 is sounding like a good place to get your number one wide receiver.
I think you have to go get a veteran. But the only 2 guys who I think if you sign them, okay, you have found your number one wide receiver, are Devontae Adams, and that's not happening, or Chris Godwin. I think Godwin's really good. And he's coming off an injury, hurt himself, he's out for the season. I think he's really good, and I think he would be your number one wide receiver. And any other free agent, I think, is a guy that you could bring in, and especially the good ones, like Allen Robinson, a couple of the other guys, Juju Smith-Schuster, Christian Kirk. I think if you brought one of those guys in, he's clearly, and I won't even call him a number 2, but he is one of your 2 top wide receivers. So I would agree. If it's not Godwin or Devontae Adams, and I don't even consider him, I think that you have to go get your wide receiver in the draft and know that you just signed another veteran to go along with him to help that guy and to be a good pro. But I don't think anybody in free agency becomes like Jamar Chase. You're going to have to draft that guy. The only guy who could become your Jamar Chase is Chris Godwin, I think.
All right, and this is an interesting one as well. So the Bleacher Report comes out. One mistake every NFL team must avoid making in the 2022 draft. For the Browns, don't double down on wide receiver need. Even if they make a strong push for top target in free agency, it won't be enough. They should dedicate the 13th pick in a later selection to the position to revamp it. What once looked good on paper never came to fruition. They got to draft a couple of guys because I think that room needs remade. Peoples-Jones, yes. Landry, if you keep him, yep. Anthony Schwartz, and that's about it.
And who knows about Anthony Schwartz?
Yeah.
Guys who run really fast are nice. Guys who run really fast and catch the ball play wide receiver in the NFL. And we don't know about Anthony Schwartz yet. On our little show on 92.3 The Fan, I caught a lot of this summer because I said I think the Browns need to go out and get another wide receiver. And everybody said, oh, no, you've got Odell and you have Jarvis and Rashard Higgins. And it just looked weak to me. And then you lost Odell, and I say lost because he was lost, and they got rid of him. And that's fine. And I forget how, whatever, he wasn't here. Then it was just glaring how badly this team needed a wide receiver. So I think you better double down on wide receiver. You either sign 2 free agents and draft a guy high, or you draft a guy high, draft another guy relatively high, and sign a free agent. You better, I think, put real assets into 3 wide receivers. And that doesn't mean you draft a guy in the 5th or 6th or 7th round and keep your fingers crossed. Although that can happen. And we've seen that. And we've had productive players here at wide receiver taking rounds like that. Brian Brennan, Reggie Langhorne. They were really good when they were here. Perfect team wide receivers. They did a really nice job, and along with Webster Slaughter. So though you can find those guys, great. If you don't use your first round pick for it, Dave, maybe you trade back into the first round, or you draft 2 guys in the second round, or you get a guy in the second and the third, and you go sign a pretty good free agent. You better bring 3 wide receivers to this team, because otherwise, tell me who your guys are going to be.
Yeah.
Who's it going to be?
And again, the way I've been phrasing it, who threatens the defense in the passing game?
Nobody here right now, but is it them or is it the quarterback?
Correct. And again, we won't know. We won't know that. And that's the worst part of it. I don't know that the Browns have a complete handle on that, which is kind of scary.
I hope they do. They better know more than we do about it, or they're in trouble. Well, if Baker can play at the level we've seen him play before, I call them the Magnificent 8, only because I can't think of anything better to call them. The 8 games when Freddie Kitchens was the offensive coordinator under Greg Williams, Baker was really good. I mean, he was really good, and he was really young. And you just thought, well, this thing's going to fly, and then it hasn't. And that, and last year in not this just included season, but the playoff season, he played really well. I mean, he was tough. And if that Baker shows up all the time, you don't have any quarterback questions. He's good enough. And if the Baker who shows up last year shows up again, there's a big problem. And so he has to play at the level that he has shown everybody he can play at. It's not to bash the guy, Dave. The guy has shown he can play quarterback at a really high level in the NFL. But playing quarterback at a really high level on an inconsistent basis doesn't do your team much good. And whether it was injury or whatever it was, it didn't work. So, man, they better have it figured out, or they better have somebody, like Mike Lombardi said at the beginning of the show, they better have somebody else better. And if they don't, well, then you go with the guy. But, man, the whole passing game thing, you can throw all the wide receivers out there you want. If your quarterback's not doing the job, if he's not reading the number 1 wide receiver, he's not giving that guy enough time, if he's not standing in the pocket, or if he's not rolling out at the play call, I mean, there's so much more that goes into it. But the quarterback has to make plays. And look at the teams that made the playoffs and did well in the playoffs. They had quarterbacks who made plays.
Yeah, without question. Jeff Phelps, 92.3 The Fan, Bally Sports, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, talking a little bit about the defense. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Phelps. Time to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns defense.
Hi, this is Mustafa, 50-year Browns fan, and something I wanted to touch on, which we haven't heard a lot of talk about in the offseason, was Joe. I mean, Joe's defensive schemes, for lack of a better term, were very boring. I mean, I wanted to see more, maybe Clowney and Garrett on the same side. I wanted to see them. I mean, there were some games where I was biting my nails saying, look, they're double teaming Garrett. Where's the help? I mean, where's the defense? Where's the defensive schemes? And, I just think that Joe Woods needs to step it up this year. And I'd like to know what your opinion is on what you thought about some of the defensive schemes or the lack thereof in some of the games. Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, as always, appreciate it, Jeff. I would have liked the Browns to be a little more aggressive and get after it a little bit, but by and large, I thought the defense was pretty good, and it got better as the year went on. So I understand the thought, but I think Joe Woods did a pretty nice job with the defense overall.
significantly improved. You gave Joe Woods some better players, and look what he did with them. I thought they were improved. The key to winning defense is to keep the other team from scoring points. And the only thing I would say where I thought at times the defense needs to step it up is when you have to get the other offense off the field because you've got to get the ball back in the hands of your offense so you can score some points. That's the only time. There were a few games where I just thought, man, you got to stop them now, and they didn't. Overall, I thought the defense made a really nice step last year, and I don't have any qualms about Joe Woods continuing as defensive coordinator, and I don't have any qualms about the schemes that he played and the personnel that he used. I thought they made really nice steps last year.
All right, so let's take a look at this. Top candidates for a second-year breakout in 2022. Pro Football Focus, they say Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. The thing they point out is his 7.4 missed tackle rate. If he improves on that top 10 linebacker in the league. And Jeff, I think it's important to note he played injured, after that high ankle sprain. I think that factored into a little bit. I want to see more of that guy on the field. He brings an element to the Browns that they just didn't have before they drafted him.
I agree. He's the kind of guy who looks like he can be an impact player from the linebacker spot. And whether that's in, getting to the quarterback on a pass rush, whether it's dropping back, whether it's stopping the run, I think he can be a really impactful player for this defense. And, again, you want guys to come into the league and, set the world on fire right away. That's unrealistic. So as a second-year player, and got a little slow start, if we recall, I expect him to be really good. And he could be that kind of player who has a huge impact on the defense. And if you have Myles Garrett up front, you have Owusu-Koramoah in the second level, and then you have Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome at corners, in the defensive backfield, John Johnson. I think you've got some playmakers at every level of the defense.
Yeah, and the ability to be pretty elite as a unit. Let's see if they can put it together. Yeah, got to put it together. Jeff Phelps, 92.3 The Fan, Bailey Sports. As always, man, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you having me.
All right, Jeff Phelps. You can listen to him, 92.3 The Fan in the morning, Talking Heads with Baskin and Phelps. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, turn our attention to the Cavs. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com joins us. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We turn our attention to the NBA. Cavs will begin the second half of the season, although well over half over already tomorrow night. Let's take a look at this tweet. Basketball Reference with the odds to win the NBA championship. And currently the Cavs have the 6th best odds at 7.0%, ahead of the Bucks, the defending champs. You got the Suns, Warriors, Jazz out of the West. Right now they have the Celtics with the best chance from the East. The Heat and the Cavs not far behind. Let's welcome in Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Sam, that seems a little skewed, but I'm all in with the odds for the Cavs winning the championship. It seems a little high and a little lofty, but the team's playing well.
Who should doubt them now, right? They've been playing so well. Having won, people forget now because we've been on such a long break. Won 13 of 18. Yes, they've lost 2 road games in a row, entering the second portion of the schedule, the post-All-Star break, when everybody kind of steps it up a little bit, especially when you're talking about the Eastern race being as close as it is. The dog days of the season are really over because now you're kind of fighting for playoff positioning. Every game matters from here on out. So, hey, I doubted them. I think we all doubted them at the beginning of the season, before the season, that they were going to win 27, 30 games. So the fact that they're even on that chart that you just showed is pretty remarkable. And like I said, they're playing well. There's really no reason to doubt that all of a sudden things are going to go south because they've overcome a lot already. So finals seems like a long shot, but so did playoffs seem like a long shot at the beginning of the year.
So top 8 teams, including the Nets, currently at 8th, are within 7 games of each other in the East. You kind of alluded to it. It's all bunched together. How tough is it going to be for the Cavs to get one of those top 6? That's got to be the goal, avoid the play-in. How tough is that going to be?
It's not going to be easy. You talk about the Nets, who are now we're hearing that the New York City vaccine mandate is probably going to end soon, which will clear Kyrie Irving for all games. We're hearing that Kevin Durant is, getting healthier and potentially going to be back in the lineup soon. So, and then of course Ben Simmons, we assume, is going to play at some point. Sounds like he's a couple of weeks away still, but that's just one team. That's the team with the big 3 and the big powers. But you also have the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks. You have the Miami Heat, who were in the finals 2 seasons ago. I'm sure the Sixers should probably be better, or at least they will be on paper with James Harden. And, right there's 4 teams I just named. And then you throw in the Celtics, who seem to be playing good basketball lately, as well as the Bulls, who have been very good this season. So right there, 6 teams, Dave. And then the Cavs are in the mix, obviously 7. Which one of those teams are they going to be better than to not have to play in the play-in game? So, yeah, it's very tight. And if you're the Cavs, you just have to keep focusing on what you've been doing and doing well. And I will say the Cavs' big advantage is what they showed all season long. When they have Allen and Mobley and Markkanen out there, that makes it very difficult for opposing teams to score. And if they continue to utilize that, not to mention the all-star play of Darius Garland, if they continue to utilize those things, they have a good shot of being in that top 6, maybe in the 4 or 5 range. But that's avoiding the play-in game, and that's what you're hoping to do.
The other thing is and we kind of gloss over it. So Garland has had a nagging back. He's been in and out of the lineup. Played the last couple, but it's been a nagging injury. Markkanen has missed a bunch with that high ankle sprain. And now you've got Karis LeVert that you kind of get integrated. How important are those facets? And what do they need to do to kind of sort through and get back to where they want to go? If you're going to prioritize it, what are some of the important things for the Cavs as they get ready for that second half push?
Yeah, you have to be wise. Darius Garland looked fine in the All-Star game. Hopefully that's not an issue that's going to be lingering. Sometimes back issues, of course, back tightness and soreness can linger throughout a season. You just have to judge how much is it going to impact him in the long term. If you do need to rest him, you try to rest him in those games that you think maybe you could win without him. For instance, say the Washington Wizards at home, which I believe is a game Saturday night. Maybe you take some of those games off if his back's still bothering him. You don't want to rush Markkanen back. The nice thing for the Cavs is more than likely you are in the playoffs, whether it's the play-in tournament, whether it's hosting a first-round series as a 4, 3, or 4 seed, you're going to be in the playoffs. So you want to approach everything as if you're in when you're talking about injuries and nicks and bruises and those kind of things, so that people are at their healthiest when it means the most. That said, you do have to position yourself to try to get one of those higher seeds and theoretically, play a worse opponent in the first round and not have to play in the play-in tournament, because then you're playing extra games. You're not really feeling great about yourself if you're playing as a 7th seed against the 10 in the tournament. So they're going to be wise about it. The big thing for them is, and I was just telling somebody this the other day, win the games on your schedule that you have circled as probable wins. Don't lose those games, and then maybe steal a few, and you're going to be in good position. They start back up with the Detroit Pistons on the road, a winnable game. Try to get that win there. And then if you lose to the Sixers 2 or 3 times, they still have to play them 3 times. If you lose to them, it's not as big of a deal. And some of these nicks and pains and aches that aren't going away, those aren't as big of a deal, and you can afford to rest guys in those situations.
How important is it for them to figure out exactly how Caris LeVert fits in, and does that kind of increase their ceiling, do you think?
Yeah, that's theoretically should increase their ceiling. You're missing Colin Sexton, you're missing Ricky Rubio. You needed to go out and find another guy who can go in and get you points. And the good news is we've already seen it with Caris LeVert, who had to fill in for Darius Garland in that Indiana game. The Cavs were down 21, and then Caris LeVert just started breaking people down and finished with 22 points. I think at some point here soon, he's probably going to be your starting 2 guard. Lately he's been coming off the bench as he gets acclimated to what the Cavs are doing. You're probably, the idea is when you're totally healthy, I would think, is to start Garland and LeVert in the backcourt, and then Markkanen, Mobley, and Allen as your big 3 in the front court. So, maybe that moves Isaac Okoro to the bench, which that would have to. But how LeVert fits in is going to be key to that, how he fits in with those other starters. And the good news is he has shown a penchant for fitting in already, just needs a little bit more time. And that'll come with some more game experience and more practice experience with his teammates.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we continue to talk Cavs basketball. Take a look at how the Cavs have performed against some of the top 8 teams in the East. Also, what would make this a successful season? We'll get Sam's thoughts. Sports4CLE, be right back.
From 1920 through 1960, Cleveland's African-American population increased by 750%. Through it all, Alan E. Cole and his camera were there. Today, over 27,000 negatives comprise the Cole collection of the Western Reserve Historical Society, providing a unique perspective of the African-American community.
We continue talking Cavs, getting ready to start the second half of the season, make that playoff push. Let's take a look at how the Cavs have performed against the top 8 teams in the Eastern Conference. So they have the 3rd best record against top 8 teams in the East at 9-7. And again, it's kind of all bunched up, just like it has been in the top 8 for the standings overall. Boston has really been playing well. Sam, are you surprised when you look at that the Cavs have played that well against the best teams in the conference?
I think the whole season's been a surprise, but yeah, especially that part of it, the fact that they have had success. And, to me, their most impressive win, their most telling win of the season was probably that win against the Bucks at home when the Bucks were basically in full strength. You're talking about the defending champs, and the Cavs had their way with them. And, we even heard Giannis Antetokounmpo after the game saying these aren't the same old Cavs. And they proved that all throughout the first half of the season or before the All-Star break. And they've been taking care of business at home, which is a big part of what you're trying to do. If you're a good team, a playoff team, that you want to win those games at home and take care of teams like Milwaukee and the Miami Heat and some of those other teams that are good and in the race. If you can beat them at home, you don't need to worry about it so much on the road. So it is a big surprise, and it's been a pleasant surprise. And, the one thing that we talked about before, Dave, is that they're going to have to start paying attention to the fact that other teams are really going to take them seriously, especially those other East contenders. And, something you're going to have to be physically and mentally ready for in these final 20-plus games of the year.
And again, it's a new feeling for the Cavs because they're so young. You mentioned home court. Cavs have 14 home games left on their schedule, second most in the NBA. Let's talk. Season has already been better than anybody thought, probably, other than maybe Kobe Altman and the team. What do you think the Cavs have to do to make this a quote-unquote successful season? What makes this year a success for this team?
You're exactly right. First of all, I think if people had asked us that question at the beginning of the year, everybody would have answered the 10th seed is a successful seed in the Eastern Conference. But now they've really given us a taste of things that could be, and so you want them to finish there in the top six. I think if they finish with 6th seed at a minimum, the lowest, that would be a successful season. I think even the 7th seed getting into the first round of the playoffs, if they are in the play-in tournament, to win that tournament and get a 7th, 8th seed and get a taste of the playoffs. We have to remember that they're so young in terms of their core, in terms of their quote-unquote big three of Garland and Mobley and Allen. Those three guys are still very young, and those are the three guys you're building around, not to mention Colin Sexton, who you assume is going to be back next. So there's really a lot more to come, and we can't put too much into what happens this year. I talked to one GM who randomly just said, the next best thing to winning a championship is a regular season full of fun. And that's really what they've given their fans this year and given the franchise and a bright future. So to me, to be able to continue some semblance of what they've been doing this far and, battle for a playoff spot, make a respectable showing while in the playoffs. You don't have to win a series, just give a respectable showing and get a taste of things that might be to come and show that you're ready to take those next natural steps of, winning a first-round series and then winning a second-round series and then getting to the finals and winning a title. All of those things, if they can continue to show, which is what they've shown so far, if they continue to do what they're doing, to me, that's a successful season, regardless of what happens in the playoffs. No one is expecting them to get to the finals this year, and it's okay if you don't. It's okay if you don't win a first-round series because they've really shown that good things are still to come, and there's plenty of time for all of that.
Yeah, the one thing I would say, and we've seen enough NBA basketball to know, playoffs are different. So I really want this young core to kind of get the experience of a full 5 or 7 game series. And I think that will be hugely important to the growth of this group together. They need to get in and see what it's like because that's just going to make them work harder to get back.
Yeah, the playoff basketball is a different style of basketball than regular season. It's more physical. A lot of times the lineups are a little bit tighter, the rotation. Instead of playing 9-10 guys like you do during the regular season, you're playing 7 or 8. Every little injury is, magnified, and the refs let more things go. So the more games you play, you're exactly right, Dave, the more games you play, the better it is as part of the learning process. And, I remember way back in 1985, I just have a story on the website about it when the Cavs started 2-19 and got into the playoffs anyway and played Larry Bird's Celtics down to the wire. In fact, they lost. Back then, the series were 5 games, best of 5, and they lost in 4 games, those Cavs. But the final score of the series, when you totaled up everybody's points, was tied. So if they can get in there and kind of this year's team kind of experience something like that, it really will give you a lot of hope for the future. And I think they're already there in terms of hope for the future, but just a lot of good experience when it comes to learning how to close out and win playoff games. They've learned how to do it in the regular season. Now they get to try to do it in the playoffs, we assume, within the next couple of months here.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. As always, man, thanks so much for the time and the insight, Sam. Appreciate it very much.
All right. Well, we will talk to you soon, Gabe. Thanks again for having me.
All right. Sounds good. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Make sure you read them. All things Cav and NBA, hoopswire.com. That'll do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. Mac Robinson filling in as the host tomorrow. Scheduled guest, the D-Man, Dennis Maniloff, Ashley Bastock from cleveland.com. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock here on Sports for CLE. Have a great night, everybody.